you very much. I'd like to invite Pastor Tim Straub from Crosswind Community Church to lead us in the invocation.
Just join with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you today for the opportunity to come and meet in this room. I thank you, Lord, for your presence here, and I thank you for every man and woman here that you've put over great responsibility. I pray, Lord, that you'll give them great wisdom and discernment, and we thank you, Lord, that even though we make our plans, you direct our steps. So we're asking for that, Lord God, in this meeting today, and I pray that you'll bless their families and homes of each officer that's represented, Lord God. Bless them in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Dr. Brown, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That's it. Okay, we have on the agenda a presentation today for a Leafs update. I understand that Mr. Dorico is not going to be here today. Are we prepared to do that presentation?
Yes, sir. I have the information in his absence.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What we've accumulated, or the data that we've accumulated, has been over a course of 17 months when the program was first started in September of 2012. The first slide has kind of a breakdown of how we were using a new technology, if you will, figuring it out where it's more beneficial for law enforcement purposes. So we used it in areas for priority calls, emergent calls, and also deputy assistant calls initially, and then we've expanded it from there. During the time period of September 2012 through last month, that's a 17-month period, we responded to 859 priority calls. Emergent calls, we went to 250, and deputy assistant calls, those were radio emergent traffic type calls where a deputy was either in a fight or requested backup or assistance. Maybe there was some hostile suspects or subjects there at the location, and we would deploy the aircraft. If we were busy at one point, we would deploy the aircraft there to be aerial observance also. So we did that on 202 occasions. The next slide has a little more detail of some of the results that we were able to find during that 17-month deployment. Primarily, you see the big number of 589 investigations. Our narcotics team and any of our other specialized units, our burglary team or robbery team, whenever they would do a search warrant or would want to gather intel prior to doing a search warrant, we would use it in an investigative situation, maybe get an idea of where's a better place to enter, or try and get some real-time data just prior to entry, just in case there's some unforeseen additional people at a location that wasn't accounted for in their operations plan, or if maybe there's dogs that we didn't know before, or there's extra cars that were parked that might be obstructing their initial planned path to enter to the house or whatever location it was. So it was very, very heavily used by the directed patrol units. I'm sorry, by those specialized units. And then you see the next column over, it says detentions or fines. Basically, we would get a call where, and it happens pretty often, where maybe the initial call would come in like there's a crime happening, like a domestic violence call. And then it was done by a third party. Somebody would call in, I saw somebody, slapping somebody, or the perception that a crime was occurring. Well, we would get a description of the individual or a description of the vehicle, and the plane would deploy to the area, and the plane would actually track or find what was initially in the call, but it turned out not to be a crime. So had it been a crime, that number technically could turn over to an arrest or an assisted arrest. So we throw that in there as far as the system was successful in its deployment. It just happened in that occasion not to be a crime, or it was just a detention, or it was a search that was also done, like maybe we're looking for a vehicle in the desert. So we consider that a successful use of the actual program in the system. So 42 occasions is where we actually were successful in doing fines or detentions. Assist arrest, where occasions, there's 37 of them, where the deputy maybe themselves did an arrest or maybe inside a house, but we responded to like a burglary or some other domestic violence situation in there. And the plane, on occasion, will probably be the deputy there and would have a surveillance making sure that the suspect actually would not leave. All right, so the plane, obviously the operator that would be feeding information to the ground responding deputies probably wasn't directly involved in the actual spotting of a suspect trying to leave, but at least contained and monitored the area if somebody were to leave. So we consider that an assist. And there were 37 of those occasions where an arrest was actually made when the aircraft was deployed in that type of situation. And then there were 15 direct occasions where suspects actually left the scene or drove away from the scene, and the plane actually tracked that suspect, guided ground deputies to the location where the suspect was ultimately arrested. So those were a couple dynamic situations. Perfect examples, we had an incident at a Walmart on Valley Central Way where 3 suspects did a commercial burglary, if you will, or shoplift, and they ran into the neighborhood. Obviously now, not knowing if they're armed or not armed, jumping into backyards. So you can imagine, you know, the fear that some neighbors might have if somebody just jumps in their backyard and they continue to do so. Well, the aircraft was able to track them, the camera, and the operator was able to guide deputies to that location and make an arrest. So that's all we have so far to report at this time during that 17-month period. Are there any other questions maybe I can answer?
I appreciate you to giving the update. I know that there are a lot of questions that you see in the newspaper or online social media that say that they mention maybe there's been 1 or 2 arrests or 1 or 2 interventions as a result of using LEAPS. So to see these numbers is quite eye-opening, 859 priority calls, etc.
Right.
So it's really good that we get updated information. And I think it's important that you continue to do so and bring it back to this commission so that we can get information to the public about how their tax dollars are being spent and the efficiency of the LEAPS program as well.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Might I suggest we do that on a quarterly basis, if that's acceptable to the commission?
Everybody
Right.
all right with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right.
Mike, I would also like to say thanks. To me, the big thing is just being the deterrent, that knowing that if something were to happen to me or someone in my family, that, like you just said, the possibility of that person getting caught because we could track them, I think is very important to the citizens. I know that there's a lot of heat sometimes, but just knowing that you know, for anybody and their family members, that this could be possibly this person captured simply because we had LEAPS is reassuring to me.
One other thing I want to add also is some of the other arrests that we've made were also DUI related, where a family member knew that, hey, the driver of a vehicle just left their house, they know they're drunk. We were able to successfully, I don't have the exact number, but I know personally on 2 occasions I was able to monitor the system and guide deputies to make a 2 DUI arrest. So it's very beneficial for the whole general public, you know, to take one other drunk driver off the roads.
Thanks for that report. It's a terrific technology. It's fascinating to me. I'm echoing what Commissioner Gillette said. The opposite is also true. People are aware that this technology is in existence. It may change behavior on the criminal side.
We hope so.
Any other questions, comments?
Do you know how the numbers compare to the helicopter?
I don't have that information. That's information most likely either kept at Aero Bureau, or I'm not sure if we even keep statistics for that type. It's just an additional resource. I'd have to see if they actually
Yeah, I work
keep
right
logs
out
of
there. I
that.
see it going off all the time, so I just didn't know. I would be interested in knowing their direct arrests. Thank you.
Let me give a little insight on that. The helicopter is more of a complementary tool to this. Obviously, their capabilities are a little different. The ability to stay aloft as long as they can with the aircraft is much greater. The cost of operation is significantly cheaper. But there are some limitations, obviously, that the helicopter can fly lower. It can do tighter rotations. And they have an observer that's able to actually provide real-time intelligence from the seat over the radio, as opposed to it being relayed through the desk. So they really are two different tools. And what we have found is that we don't get anywhere near the amount of hours of coverage from the helicopter as we do from the Leaps aircraft. So I don't know if that would change anything, but the stats really wouldn't tell you a whole lot, because it's almost like comparing apples and oranges.
Okay. Like I said, I see it going off almost every day out there, so.
And like I mentioned before, this is such new technology. These are just statistical categories that we kind of just brainstormed that make sense for us. I don't even know if the Aero Bureau keeps those type of specific statistics.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much for the presentation.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. This section is for public business from the floor, agendized items. Citizens who would like to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any agendized item may do so when the item is being considered by the Commission. We ask that you please complete a speaker card and identify the agenda item you'd like to discuss. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. And I have 2 speaker cards, is that all? And the first one is on agenda item NB1, and the speaker is Mr. Ed Galindo.
I prefer my wife go on first.
And the first card is on NB1, and the speaker is Lilia Galindo.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Lilia Galindo, and I have a bilingual call-in radio program named Café con Leche, the voice of the Antelope Valley. I am on the air Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 a.m., and many of my listeners call to tell me about their struggles with when their cars are impounded. These are the cars that they need to go to work, take their children to school, and even use them for their work. These cars are impounded for 30 days for no reason other that they don't have a driver's license, which up to this day they are not allowed to get. The 30 days punishment that comes with fines and charges often exceeds $2,000. We believe immigrants, or those that look like immigrants, are unfairly targeted due to what they look and not for any vehicle code violation. They are poor and cannot reasonably be expected to afford the high cost of impounding. We are anxiously waiting for the AB 60 to go into effect, but so far it looks like that will not take effect until 2015. That is the day in which everybody can have a driver's license. But while this happens, more hard-working people will lose their jobs and their cars for lack of a driver's license only. We want the Criminal Justice Commission to recommend the following to the City Council. Review and recommend to the City Council the approval of the resolution presented by Ed Galindo until AB 60 takes effect. That will give a driver's license to those who do not have one due to their immigration status. Stop the practice of stopping vehicles simply to verify if the driver has a driver's license. I have received reports that this happens very frequently in the east side of the city, where sometimes there are 4 motorcycle officers in the same location stopping and impounding cars for reasons other than vehicle code violations. I have had people tell me that they would only stop Latinos or Afro-Americans. We would like to recommend to the captain of the Lancaster Sheriff Station that he instruct his officers to use their discretion under the community caretaking doctrine, a legal guideline that instructs law enforcement to look at the totality of a situation to decide the best course of action. However, if the car is impounded, we would like that the Community Advisory Committee can participate and recommend impounding or release and leave it up to the Sheriff's Department. I can't help but notice that there is not one Hispanic member on your commission. I just hope that you can understand the urgency in resolving this matter. Please consider the Latino culture. We believe that when there is a willing participation, maybe we can find a win-win resolution in which everybody's happy and we can work together to have a better city of Lancaster, a better Antelo Valley. Thank you very much. We came here not because we are criminals, but we are here because we are demanding justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Galindo?
I don't know if I can do this in 3 minutes. Commissioners, everybody here today, I'd like to, first, my name is Edward Galindo.
Ed, can I interrupt you real quick? Can you take the time limit off of him, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly. How long do you think you're going to need?
I'm gonna be open for questions, if you want. I really don't know.
Okay. Let's see how it goes.
Okay. My name is Edward Galindo. I worked for the municipal court system for 27 years. I clerked for Dick Trevisan when he first came on the bench, and from there he went to the federal bench. I was with him for his whole time there. I also work on the Tapestry Committee here, that's Lancaster, and also I'm a commissioner on the Election Committee. We've been working on this, Lee and I have been working on this impounding situation for the last 3 years. We've talked to sheriffs, we talked to just about everybody we can, trying to get some resolutions to this problem. We know that AB 60 is passed. We know also that it's not going to come into effect until January the 1st. I've written up a resolution, and I hope I gave each one of you a copy, if you can go over that, and if you have any questions on that. 4 other cities, Berkeley, San Jose, Maywood, and Bell Gardens have all passed a resolution similar to the ones that I'm opposing now, as I'm putting up now. If you'll notice in the resolution, I've entered a comment that this resolution will, maximum extent, consisting with state laws. We don't plan on making any state laws. We'd like to use the state laws that are currently in existence. In the year 2004, 24,000 vehicles were impounded. Now, I can't say that those were all for people that didn't have their papers for being here in the country. But here in Lancaster, in 2011, there were 3,811 vehicles impounded. Now, these are people that are working, have to use their car. A lot of them work down the hill. A lot of them use their cars for their work. The people that are doing the grass work, the lawnmowers and stuff like that. I noticed also that there are 2 other attorneys on your commission, and I tried to keep as well, when I drafted up this resolution, I tried to cite all the cases and laws that are necessary to pass this resolution. We went to the mayor said, come to the commission, and that's what we're here for. I'd take questions on this, on anything that you'd like to know about this particular resolution.
Okay, well, questions? Anybody? Thank you. I was handed a resolution as I sat down.
I beg your pardon?
I said, as I sat down here today, I received the resolution.
Right.
It's the first time I've seen it, first time I've heard of it, so I have to plead ignorance at this point in time, so I don't know specifically what's in it. Both of you have made compelling arguments as to why it is that we need to go forward and make a recommendation, but, you know, I don't know what's in this yet. This is part of my issue. I don't know. Anybody else receive this in advance?
Well, I went to Mr. Bozikian and gave him copies at another meeting that we had prior to this, and I really thought that he would give you copies, and that you have some preparation prior so that you could have.
If it would have been given at a prior meeting, if it wasn't before our last gathering, this is the first time that we would get together to discuss it, and I'm sure you're aware we're not able to meet as a commission, you know, in separate non-public forum.
No, I understand.
Yeah, so this would be the time that we would get it.
Under the Brown Act.
Sometimes we get briefing information. I don't know when the other was provided, so I'm just letting you know that I appreciate the arguments, and I appreciate the sentiment, but I haven't had a chance to look at the resolution, so that's just a comment. We can get back into that when we actually have the presentation as well, a little bit later on today.
Ken, is there some way that we can make another appointment to find out whether you have passed or whether you are going to give it to the city council?
Absolutely.
It is a city council resolution.
I understand, but we're being asked to look at it and make a recommendation to the city council. If we're just going by the agenda, you know, right now we're doing the public comments, so I'm responding to your comment on it. What we haven't received yet, which we will under new business item NB1 when it's discussed, is discussion and possible action regarding the vehicle impoundment policies, and there would be a presentation, I understand, given by Lieutenant Krager at that point in time, and that provides more information, and then we can ask clarifying questions at that time as well, and that's today, and then we'll see where we go, because none of us have, this is new. Okay? So, anyway, so I just want to let you know that that's, in my mind, I'm struggling with that issue.
That. I'm hoping that you do read it. And
I definitely will read it.
And I've done quite a bit of research on it. And as I say, I took the bar at 69. I haven't practiced for about 20 years, so it gets a little difficult doing the research again. But I did some research, and I put together, I made it very simple. It's a very simple resolution.
Right. And
it's more of a policy than anything else.
Well, your passion for the subject is obvious and requires consideration, but knowledgeable consideration by this commission.
Of course.
Correct. Okay.
Thank you very much.
If I could ask.
Sure.
Just a quick question. I'm just sort of glancing through this. Again, it's the first time that I've seen it and trying to get the drift of what you were suggesting. So the suggestion here, I think, is to have a carve-out for a special group of people from the general law.
It's no different than any other civil law that we put out. We've done this before. It's not unconstitutional. The city of Los Angeles has their Rule 7. They've done it. It's gone up to the appellate court. The appellate court found that it was constitutional. They're doing the same thing.
So you suggest that this special hearing take place for everybody that's at the risk of having their car impounded?
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
The exception here, the special hearing, that is immediate hearing with the captain of the Sheriff's Department, would be considered for every person who's at risk of having their car impounded.
Yes.
Is that what I understand?
Yes.
So no matter what the reason was?
We are also, my wife put it up, I don't know if you've heard it, but we understand that this would be a big burden on the Sheriff's Department. Well, we have civilians that are working with the sheriffs now that could also hear the complaints and offer their opinion one way or the other. So we don't want to burden the Sheriff's Department any more than they're doing right now. And we realize they're doing a good job. But this situation, we have to wait now until the first of next year for the people to get their license. And until then, there's going to be a lot more cars impounded. Now, that's what we want to prevent, that particular time. After that, the license are in. They can get their license. The ones that are illegal will have their license impounded. The ones that are not, then they can keep their cars. But we've got to wait. We've been working on this for all this time. The amount of cars that are taken and the people that are hurt by it, particularly the Latino community, which we represent, is having very difficult times. We've had meetings on this. We've had gatherings of maybe 20, 30 people who have had their cars impounded, and they're hurting. One guy had his car impounded 3 times. I know he shouldn't have been driving, but it was 3 times. And he's a gardener, and that's what he uses his car for. So we're trying to help the people here that absolutely need their cars. We're not going against the law. We understand the sheriff has a big burden to do, but we're willing to help them. We'll form a committee, do the groundwork for the sheriffs if they want it, and then we'll give them the idea, give them our opinion, and let them make the decision. So I think it's a win-win situation just for this year. After this, we got Senate Bill 60 comes into effect, and then it's up to everybody else to get their license. So this bill is no different than 1070 was that was passed by our city. So we would like to get on the other side and help the Latino population, which is growing. Any more questions?
So thank you. As Commissioner Fuller said, you've thought about this quite a bit, and it's something you're passionate about. Do you have a website where there's some information about this available?
No, I don't.
Okay.
My wife has a website. You may be able to go work through her so we can do something on that. We can do something on that.
Thank you.
And I have done quite a bit of work on it. If anybody has any question, you can contact me or my wife, and we'll give you some background on it.
And I look forward to Captain Nelson's comments when we discuss this further. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think that, just as one more comment, though, because I've heard a couple of times mentioned today that one of the compelling reasons to make the recommendation for this resolution, in favor of the resolution, is that the people who don't have use of their cars need their cars. And honestly, I don't find that compelling. I believe that anyone who loses their car and was driving to begin with probably needed their car for whatever reason they lost it. But it is a complex. With that said, it's a very complex issue when you talk about NV 60, where it is the law is going, the issues potentially of profiling and other issues that we should get to the bottom of. Those may be compelling reasons. But I don't think anyone that is either given in any way restricted in the use of their vehicle feels like they didn't need it, no matter what their race or ethnicity or anything else.
The statutes indicate that all things can be taken into consideration when they do take their car. If some of these people don't comply with the law, they should not have their cars. But when they are complying with the law, and the simple reason that they don't have a driver's license is because they're here without documentation, then at that time it's up to us and it's up to the people here to decide whether these people are going to be burdened, whether their family is going to be put in jeopardy. And this is a jeopardy situation with families. When you take the car away from the person that's making the money for the family, my God, what's the guy going to do? And if you know the Latino population, and the father is usually the one that's making the money, and you take his existence away, what do you got? We've got a lot of criminals. I think. My wife's family, and her being one of 9 children, Hispanic, her mother was the breadwinner. So it's not. There are always exceptions to the rule. But I understand your point. I'm just saying that no one wants to lose their vehicle, regardless of who they are. As far as them being in here illegal, that's another issue that we can settle someplace else. But this impounding, they've already said that it's not going to be happening. They're going to give them the opportunity to get their license as of the first of the year.
Right.
But until then, there's going to be a lot more cars impounded and a lot more families hurt. Thank you.
I think we understand your position. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time, both of you, for being here to discuss that. We do appreciate it. Were you... Right over here.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Okay, so...
Javier Flores.
Javier Flores, but there's no agenda item that you're talking. Is this NB1 as well?
NB1, I
Same one? Okay. Oh, it is. It's there. I'm sorry. It's agenda title, subject to be addressed. It just didn't have it on that one. Okay, so Mr. Flores, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to address all of you today. I'm here representing Antelope Valley League of United Latin American Citizens, and I want to mention one point that's been coming up over and over again. There was an interview, Ms. Galindo interviewed Captain Nelson a couple of weeks ago, about a week and a half ago, and then again she interviewed Captain Ford today in the morning. The issue kept coming up, and the issue is one of preferential treatment for a segment of the community in terms of how to apply a law. There's a concern that was been expressed that people are having difficult time applying a law differently with a certain group of people as opposed to doing it equally across the board to everyone. Why should that happen? And we pointed out on numerous occasions that it warrants the remedy to the problem that we're experiencing today warrants a special treatment. And the problem I am talking about is the discriminatory practices of how certain laws are applied, as has been demonstrated by the Department of Justice. This isn't discrimination that we perceive it. We believe that the reports are accurate, but it's not our reports that we're referring to right now. It's the DOJ report and it's the Merrick Bob report that came out in 2011. Both of these reports tell us that there's discrimination in the way, or there's perceived discrimination in the way that car confiscations and the law for confiscating cars is being applied. When you have 3,811 car confiscations in the city of Palmdale, and 83% of those are of African Americans and Latinos, when we only comprise no more than 60% of the population, that tells us something is wrong. And as a remedy then, special kinds of laws have taken place to remedy these kinds of problems. I gave as an example affirmative action, the civil rights laws, the voting rights laws. They're all laws that have been implemented to remedy discriminatory applications of other laws. So this is no different. This is what we're asking today. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could ask a couple questions. There was one part that I think I missed, and that was it's about vehicle impounding. I wasn't sure what I understood it that 60% of the population are Latinos and African Americans, but 80% of the cars are what?
83% of the cars that are being confiscated are of African American and Latino. It's a disproportionately high rate of confiscations of cars from this particular group of people.
But is there any difference in the rate of crime being committed by groups, Latino groups and African American groups?
I can't tell you that, sir.
If there was a higher rate of crime, would that be pretty normal to expect a higher rate of confiscation?
You're talking to a person who has been dealing with these kinds of issues for the past 40 years, and I can tell you that based on DOJ reports of crime and the way it's handled in the county of Ventura and then again in the city of San Fernando, on very separate occasions, maybe 30 years apart, DOJ reported on the incidents of crime and how people were being arrested, and they found discrimination at every step of the way, both in Ventura County and in San Fernando. They found that minorities were more prone to get arrested. They found that once the arrest had taken place and they went to court, minorities were found to be charged with higher crimes, and then once they were found guilty, higher rates of being found guilty, and then higher rates of incarceration. So at every point of contact with the judicial department, there was discrimination that was found. So you're asking me a question that I'm having a difficult time answering. I think that the crime rates are higher for minorities. It's probably because there's discrimination there as well.
Okay. Well, so your real argument is that the rate of accusation of criminal behavior is discriminatorily higher, and therefore the rate of confiscation of cars is higher.
Well, I'm not making that argument. I mean, you asked me a separate question, and I answered it. I'm not sure I want to make the statement that you just made, but I would say we found that there was discrimination. DOJ found discrimination in the way confiscations are being handled here, and so did Merrick Bob.
So, and that would be it would be interesting for me and maybe for others to know what that DOJ information is, and I'd be very happy to have you present that to us, and I'd be interested in it.
Very well.
Thank you.
Just a clarification on your last statement, if I may. You said that the DOJ found discriminatory behavior on the way vehicles are being compensated here.
I think the term they used is disparate. I can't remember the exact terminology they used, but in essence.
I guess the word, it was the last one, which is here. When you're saying they found that here.
In the Antelope Valley.
Talking about Lancaster.
Lancaster and Palmdale.
Okay. All right, so you are specifically talking about.
Absolutely.
As it relates to this ordinance. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Okay. Any other speaker cards? No? Okay, we're moving on to the consent calendar, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of January 8th, 2014.
So move.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Let's call for the vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, moving right along and back into the same issue. So we're going to go to new business. The first item being NB1, discussion and possible action regarding vehicle impound policies. And I understand that Lieutenant Krager is going to be giving that presentation, correct?
Good morning. We're fully aware of the community's concerns regarding our impound policies. Captain Nelson and myself have had a number of conversations with Lilia as well as Javier on this topic. It's, like I said, it's something that we're fully aware of. We've been taking a look at it for some time. The city manager, Mr. Bozigan, asked me to come and discuss what our policy currently is regarding the impounding of vehicles. The first thing I'd like to make clear is that the impound of vehicles is designed to prevent unsafe drivers from driving on the road. Okay, when we impound a vehicle for 30 days, it's a licensing issue. It's suspended license or never having a license issued. Okay, there's two distinct decision points that occur when we come across one of these situations. And that first decision point lies with the officer who makes the stop. Okay? He has the ability at that point to utilize his discretion and make a determination of whether that vehicle needs to be impounded for 30 days. Once it is impounded for 30 days, an additional decision point comes about. and that's on the release of the vehicle. While the initial decision to impound the vehicle is discretionary, the release is not. We're bound by department policy, which is in line with the California Vehicle Code. Certain requirements have to be met before we can release that vehicle. In the situation of an unlicensed driver, the requirement is that that unlicensed driver receive their driver's license. If they don't, we hold the vehicle for the 30 days. There's some other situations where if the vehicle is stolen or if it's a subject of bailment or something like that, that we can release it. But other than that, in the licensing issues, they have to receive their license. Captain Nelson looked at our impounds over the last 30 days, or the last 90 days of 2013. We did, in fact, impound 400 vehicles during that 90-day period. The records that we keep do not capture the details of each one of those. We'd have to hand search that to make a determination if those 400 impounds were all licensing impounds or if they were crime-related impounds. We also don't keep the demographics on the impounds. We understand that there's some concern that the undocumented immigrants are being unfairly represented in these vehicle impounds, and we don't have those numbers as far as how many of those are actual undocumented immigrants. There are some steps that we're prepared to take to lessen the impact on the undocumented immigrants. We recognize their concerns about losing their vehicles and this being a source of providing for their families. Captain Nelson will address those issues. But as far as the policy goes, if you guys have any questions, I can try and answer them for you.
Okay, so basically, you know, on the one hand, there's allegations of racial profiling. I think that's clear. That we have, at least in the opinion of some, that Hispanics are being targeted specifically for this law. There's been 400 impounds in the last 90 days. And on the other hand, I'm hearing there's no demographic information, which makes it difficult to reconcile those two statements.
Correct.
Okay. You talk about the discretion of the officer, and I think I understand that piece of it. But then you say that there's no discretion in terms of the release of the vehicle, excuse me, and you're guided by the California law. One thing I haven't heard is a statement of support or against, or of the resolution that's been provided, and whether that would be something, or should we address that question to Captain Nelson later, you know, as to how you see that within your policy. And
I can address that now. We haven't seen it.
Okay, so you're seeing it now also?
I'm not even seeing it yet.
Okay, so you haven't received it?
No.
Okay, all right. Well, that would make sense then, why you're not making a recommendation. Okay, all right. So it sounds to me like we have a little more work to do. But anyway, those are the two things that immediately came to mind. So is Captain Nelson, are you going to address? Is there any other questions, comments?
Did you say the discretion of the non-discretion, once it's 30 days, did you say that was departmental policy, or did you say that was state law?
It's our department policy, which is in line with the California Vehicle Code, which there's very specific requirements that have to be met. Like I said, the two decision points, the initial impound in the California Vehicle Code is a may, which indicates discretion can be used. The same vehicle code regarding the release procedures is a shall, indicating that these conditions have to be met, which removes any discretion from us at that point whatsoever. Again, it's a liability issue when we get into the shalls. If we were to release a vehicle when those conditions have not been met, we're then exposing ourselves, our department as well as the city of Lancaster to some pretty significant civil liability if we were to allow one of these vehicles to be released and those conditions hadn't been met and an accident or something of that nature was to occur.
So in essence, if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that the discussion really needs to focus on that original discretion of the officer in terms of this resolution, because when you're dealing with California laws that says you shall do something in order to release a vehicle, that it puts a much larger liability on the Sheriff's Department as well as the City of Lancaster, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly, precisely what I'm saying, sir, is that the way that the laws are written now and the constraints that we're under right now, I mean, AB 60 may change all of this. I'm not sure of all of the changes that are going to occur because of that. But right now, the only way that we can address this and lessen the impact, so to speak, is to address that initial decision point and that initial discretionary decision upon the officer making a decision on whether that vehicle needs to be towed.
Okay. Yeah, and the obvious follow-on, or at least in my mind, obvious follow-on question to that is one that we're not going to get the answer to today, which is, therefore, looking at the resolution, coming up with an opinion as to whether or not that is something that you could implement given your constraints. And from what I'm hearing from Captain Nelson, is that they haven't been privy to it yet. So we're perhaps premature in answering that question, correct?
That would be correct, sir. And just from the discussion, the things they did mention about the resolution, part of that was, I believe, a discussion about a committee or council to discuss the release or approve the release of the vehicle. Again, I don't think that's going to be feasible under the current laws because we still have to meet those conditions. And we currently have a hearing process in place precisely for that reason. It's called a Stipman hearing, and it's conducted by the on-duty watch commander. It can be conducted at the request of the driver within 10 days of their vehicle being impounded, and we look at that to make sure that it was a lawful impound and if it met all the requirements.
Yeah, but Lieutenant, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we still are speculating as to what may or may not be applicable based on a resolution that hasn't been reviewed by greater minds than mine, and the legal folks to say whether or not it does or doesn't. And is that? I mean, that's correct. Right? We're just speculating as to from what we've heard.
Yes, sir.
There are strong arguments, I believe, on both sides of the issue. I would imagine, but we're not there at this moment.
Correct, sir.
Yeah.
Just curious, in the May part of this, when the stop is made,
correct,
and the officer has discretion. Two-part question. Does this happen? And if it's not happening, what kind of issues or liability issues would it cause if if the Sheriff's Department started doing that?
Okay, well, as far as I know, it does happen. I cannot give you the precise numbers on how many times an unlicensed driver is stopped and we allow them to keep their vehicles. I don't have those numbers, so I can't tell you how often that is occurring. It's our understanding, Captain Nelson did a pretty significant review of some case law over the last few weeks regarding this issue, and it's our understanding that we are not subject to any liability at that point based upon that initial use of discretion.
Mr. Buzzigan, you had a comment?
Yeah, just a couple of things to clarify what Council's direction and goal for this commission is. And I apologize if there was an expectation that the resolution would be sent out. The Council wanted this issue addressed. The resolution is something drafted by Mr. Galindo. It's a good resolution, but it's a position. It takes a position. The council has directed that this commission look at the issue and come up with options or recommendations for it, which could include passing a resolution. It could ask the Sheriff's Department to change their policy. It could ask any of the other things. It's a complex issue that's very important. One suggestion would be is to set up some kind of subcommittee or some kind of group of the commission, not a majority, that's interested in it, and work prior to the next meeting to at least get additional information. But this is a complex issue that the council's asked you to go beyond just looking at a resolution. And by the questions, I think that's what you're doing, but I just wanted to clarify that. And if there was an expectation of Mr. Galindo that the resolution would be considered here, then that was a misunderstanding, and I'll take responsibility for that misunderstanding.
That explains a lot to me. I appreciate that. Because then it's all in context. At that point in time, we're receiving a point of view and a recommendation which needs to be meshed with other information to be able to make some sort of a informed decision as to what it is, if anything, we would like to recommend to the City Council. And if there's any further clarification that is required there, obviously this body does not have the force of law. So therefore, any recommendation we made would be purely made at that level, which would be a recommendation to the City Council based on whatever criteria, and it would be still their responsibility to either accept or reject or modify anything that we would present to them. So thank you. Mr. Ferris. Yeah.
Yes, I just had one question, if I could. The 90 days worth of data that you collected on impounds, what period of time did that cover?
That was the last 3 months, October, November, December.
And are there any prohibitions to collecting the information about the demographics of the people involved and the reason for the impound?
Well, we've been asked to look at this. It's going to be a pretty extensive, like I said, hand search to gather that information. I have to pull each individual report and citation, so it's going to be kind of a lengthy process.
Also, the information that's being sought in terms of demographics are not necessarily captured on the CHP 180, which is the form that's used to document the transfer of the impounding of the vehicle. So it's going to require not only that, but a way to marry that report with whatever citation was issued. So it's going to be quite time-consuming and labor-intensive, and that's not something that, for the short period that we looked at, that we were able to do.
During our two speakers who came up before the presentation, there were a couple of issues that I'm hoping that you might be able to address for us that they raised. One of them is that I was given the impression that they feel that there is racial profiling involved in the enforcement of the law as it stands. And I'd like a reaction on that, and whether you believe that's true or not, and what you base your opinion.
I think I'll comment on that. I would start by saying that the Sheriff's Department and myself vehemently disagree with the findings of DOJ. We don't believe that their findings are accurate or will be borne out when their methods of arriving at those numbers are known. We do not make traffic stops based on a person's race. I would venture to guess that of those, and I'd be honest with you, the 400 impounds, some of those were for evidence. A vehicle can be impounded for a variety of different things other than driving violations. But that in nearly every instance, if not every instance, a vehicle code violation accompanied the discovery that a driver's license violation was also present.
And that's a good segue, if I may, if you could address this at the same time, because another point that was raised is that the belief or understanding that vehicles are being stopped solely to see if someone does not have a driver's license.
Yeah, that should not be occurring. And like I said, typically a traffic contact occurs because there is some vehicle code violation, whether it be an equipment violation or some rule of the road violation. And at that point, obviously the driver is requested to produce a driver's license or something indicating that he has a privilege to drive, and that doesn't occur.
So if it were to be substantiated, that claim that an officer pulls someone over specifically to see if they have a driver's license, is that a violation of your policy?
I would say yes, because it's not, there would be no reason to make that detention without absent some violation that occurred. Now, we'll follow that up with the caveat that it's entirely possible that deputies know the driver's status before a stop occurs, and they may well know that that person is unlicensed from prior contacts, in which case the violation of driving without a license would be sufficient for a stop.
Since they're already aware of the situation of that person.
Correct. And I'd like to add, while we're here, is we have given a lot of consideration to the impact that the impounding of these vehicles has, both financially and for the families. I do empathize with the hardship that an impoundment, especially for 30 days, can cause. And I am open to discussing ways to further deputies' discretion in whether or not they impound a vehicle based on a license violation. But if we in fact do that, then it needs to be balanced with the threat to public safety that an unlicensed driver creates. Someone who has never been issued a driver's license has never had to demonstrate the ability to drive a vehicle safely. Somebody who's already had their license suspended has already demonstrated that they can't drive a vehicle safely, or that they're unable or unwilling to follow the rules of the road. That being said, there's obviously a significant consideration that needs to be given to public safety, not just the inconvenience of the unlicensed driver. And that's what we are going to have difficulty weighing against each other. And despite assertions to the contrary, I do understand the problem, and I do empathize with those that have had their livelihoods taken. But I would also argue that, especially in the instance of someone who, for instance, has had it taken 3 times, that's probably a lesson that should have been learned at this point. Again, I'm more than willing to work on criteria that we may sit down and hash out together to make suggestions to the officers on when it might be appropriate to have a licensed driver come and pick up the vehicle as opposed to impounding it and that kind of thing. And that's something that I'm sure that we'll be working with the Galindos and others over in the coming weeks.
Okay.
I have one question for Captain Nelson. The conditions you just said, the licensed driver to come and get it, so it's not necessarily the person that was actually lost the vehicle. What else conditions of returning? Is it insurance? Do you have to have proof of insurance when they pick up the car?
You know, I suspect that eventually we're going to end up exploring something akin to the Special Order 7 from LAPD. I don't know that the department has moved forward with that yet, but I suspect that in the coming months that they probably will. And I believe insurance is one of the requirements for the release of a vehicle. Again, I think that the way the vehicle code reads now, our only opportunity for releasing an impound is not to impound it in the first place, because those other factors need to be met. And I understand that it's kind of a catch-22, because if you could go get your driver's license, walk in with a valid driver's license and insurance, then you could have the vehicle released before the 30 days is up. The problem is obviously that if you are undocumented, it's difficult, if not impossible, to get a driver's license. So I'm hoping that much of this problem will dissipate in 2015 when AB 60 actually goes into effect, and you have the ability to get a driver's license legally. Because again, I do understand it's kind of a catch-22, not just for them, but also for us. But again, anything that we do decide, we need to weigh against the threat to public safety that unlicensed drivers create.
Thank you.
Is there more to the presentation, or are we covered? Well, thank you.
All right, thanks, sir.
I think we've managed to make a complex issue yet more complex. So, is this commission being asked to potentially take an action regarding the vehicle impound policies? If I'm reading everyone correctly here, it sounds to me like it might be in our best interest to have a little bit more time to study the issue. Mr. Blazegin has suggested that we form a subcommittee. It's probably a good idea. Does anyone disagree with that? That we can then bring it back with a little bit more information on all sides. We don't have the benefit of our public safety officer, Mr. Dorico, being here today, for example. There's voices that haven't been heard. I don't know, honestly, the impact on those other people who may have tow truck drivers, for example, that have contracts for removing vehicles. But we ought to be looking at the issue in its entirety. So with that in mind, if we could put that back to staff to form an appropriate committee, I would say that Dr. Vieira, our chairman, should be consulted. And if we can put together with their recommendation a smaller group of people with the right minds to take a closer look at the issue, closely consider what we've heard today, understanding that there's a timeliness involved, because I think that it's understood that this issue in large part may resolve itself in 2016 or 15. So with that in mind, do I have support of the commission to move forward in that manner? Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Okay, on to less important issues, perhaps. Whether we're going to meet in April or not. So, April 9th is the day after the general municipal election. In the past, we have canceled the meeting, the April meeting, or we could reset it for another date in April. Suggestions were made to me that we cancel that meeting. Do I have a motion to do so? Cancel the April 9th meeting?
So motion.
Mr. Smith. Dr. Brown seconds it. Discussion?
No.
Okay, ready to vote on that? There it is. So the decision is unanimous. See, we can make a decision. It's all right. Commission staff presentations, updates, and reports. Our monthly crime statistics. Mr. Coble.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fuller. This measurement period is December 28, 2013 through February 1st, 2014. These are the violent crime and property crime statistics, as well as arrests and unique report numbers up there. This information as well is available on the web, on the city's public safety webpage. As we take a look at comparing the February report to the January report, in February our weekly average for Part 1 crimes was 70, with a weekly median of 69. Our January report had a weekly average of 70 with a weekly median of 70.5. So you can see we're down just a little bit there. When we take a look at our January to January comparison, 2014 to 2013, you can see we're down 2%. Our crime rate per 10,000 population, February 2013 to January 2014, is 274.03, which is down 0.45 points from January of 2014. take a look at the most active reporting districts. 1135 had 60 Part 1 crimes during this reporting period, followed by 1137 with 55, 1126 with 46, 1127 with 32, and 1132 with 31. As we put those up on geographically so we can see where they're happening at, this is 1135, which led the way. You can see the vast majority of the activity is down here just west of 20th Street East and north of Avenue J. Pretty much the consistent location from report to report. So take a look at 1137, which is kind of the mirror image of that, South Avenue J. You can see the other half of that density hotspot is, again, west of 20th Street East and south of Avenue J. Take a look at 1126. Our significant area is down around the area of 10th Street West and Avenue K. For 1127, it's over the area around Valley Central Way from Avenue J up to about Lancaster Boulevard. And for 1132, it's the area immediately south and adjacent to the Antelope Valley High School. When we take a look at residence burglary, 1137 had 19 events, 1135 had 13, 1132 had 8, 1126 had 4. And then the rest of them were or the rest of the reporting districts were areas with a lower frequency than that. Larcenies involving vehicles, 1137 had 10, 1126 had 7, and 1127 had 6. For our 52-week trends for our Part 1 crimes, we first look at the areas that are trending up. You can see we've pretty much lost a lot of the bottom down here, which was what was keeping our numbers down before. So many of our weeks now are at 4 or above. Our weekly average for robberies is 5.96. You can see the little blue area going across here. You can see we're starting to pop above that periodically, and you can see that's forcing the trend line up. Take a look at burglary. It's just a slight uptick. We really had a pretty good season around the Christmas time that stayed below our weekly average or our baseline, and you can see those numbers reflected down here. One of our most recent weeks in this measurement period, you can see we popped above the baseline, but that was the first time in several weeks. Also, grand theft auto, we're below the baseline generally with the grand theft autos, but the trend line is ticking up just a little bit. As far as arson goes, that's a low-frequency crime for us. Generally, we average about 1 a week. So in those weeks that we ticked up to 2 or 3, then that means they're on this side of the middle of the 52-week, which is showing the uptick there. Trending flat is homicide. Trending down is rape, assault, larceny, and that's really what is really preserving our crime rate right now. If you could see back over here at the first part of the year or of the 52 weeks, we were pretty consistently up between 30 and maybe popping over 40. You can see since week 36 of 2013, we've just taken a nosedive as far as larcenies goes. So some of the prevention out there is obviously paying off. When we take a look at how crime is dispersed across the city, you can see the highest frequency areas to lowest frequency areas and where the individual reported crimes laid out here. to try to figure out what that means. You can see the red areas on the map here for the comparison period. You can see where crime went up, and the green areas where it actually went down. Take a look at repeat calls for service, and you should have your copies of that. You can see, again, Antelope Valley Hospital led the way, followed by the Sheriff's Station, and the reason why the Sheriff's Station is involved in that quite a bit is because people walk into the counter to make a police report, and there's nobody permanently assigned at the counter, so they have to call a car in from the field to take the report. Then Walmart East, Friendly Village Mobile Home Park, Hacienda Mobile Home Park, Walmart West, and Arbor Court. Now, the good news with this is it seems like our numbers of locations that have 10 or more calls for service are starting to be managed a little bit more, which is a positive thing. And many of the areas on here right now are pretty much our frequent flyers. And this is how they lay out across the city. And then this is our crime forecast map for February. We're forecasting 314 Part 1 crimes, and the primary reason why that number is quite a bit smaller than the other months is because this month has 28 days in it. Our January forecast, we forecasted 349. We had an actual of 368, which gave us about a 95% accuracy rate. And essentially, that's the report. Questions?
Comments, questions? No. Thank you very much. Arrest statistics, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission and of the audience. Crime Commission report, arrest statistics for Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. We have a breakdown by specific teams. The first team is the burglary suppression team. As you know, they are designated or created just to investigate the residential burglaries as well as commercial burglaries. I have side-by-side comparison comparing December and January. Felony arrest, the comparisons are pretty much about the same. Of those 25 arrests, 3 of them were parolees. They conducted 4 search warrants, so they've been pretty consistent from month in comparison from January and December. The only difference was just the amount of recovered property. This was specific because they had some really, really big warrant arrests where a lot of burglary property was recovered. Firearms recovered was also 2 versus 10. Thank you, sir. And then the next slide is our LANCAP team. They were also very active, very much so in terms of felony arrest. You can see the huge jump from January to December to 79 felony arrests. Also misdemeanors and firearms recovery are also up. So everything's up in the month of January. Something very specific also that the LANCAP team did amongst the many other activities was on the 25th of January, 2 deputies had conducted a traffic stop where the driver had committed multiple vehicle code violations during the traffic stop. Their investigation led them to some suspicious behavior between the driver and the passenger. It was later determined that 2 stolen EBT cards were found inside the vehicle, and then it was later determined that the identity of the driver was actually an outstanding felon who had a warrant for his arrest and was currently on parole. Based off that traffic stop, they conducted a search of his residence, and at his residence, they found 1.5 ounces of methamphetamine, 5 ounces of marijuana, 2 digital scales, a .32 caliber semi-automatic handgun with ammunition. Now, keep in mind, this is a felon. All right. And then one of the suspects was also identified as an active Rolling 60s gang member. So they've been very active in those type of activities, and lo and behold, what came off of a simple traffic stop was a pretty good arrest. And then our next slide, please. Our narcotics team also had an increase also in activity as far as marijuana. One of those specifically was a tip. A couple months ago, I believe I inform you of our Crime Stoppers, how citizens can report specific crimes and activities in their neighborhood. This was a Crime Stopper tip where they went to a residence and they confiscated a number of 200 plants of marijuana, 30 pounds of finished dry product of marijuana, as well as $1,000 worth of currency, and a suspect was arrested for drug dealing. So thank you to the public. Please continue with those Crime Stoppers. They do pay off. There was 12 search warrants in the month of January, and also 4 firearms were recovered based on just the narcotics team's activity. And the next slide I'd like to share with you also, that's our robbery suppression team. They were recognized by Sheriff Baca, actually on his last day, ironically, on the 20th of January, for their outstanding and exemplary service. In fact, they received an exemplary service award at Downtown Sheriff Headquarters, and those are Deputy Daniel Ament, Detective Mark Donnell, Deputy Michael Grijalva, Lieutenant Oliva, Detective Parisi, as well as Sergeant Rolofson. That entire team was credited with their work effort for a decrease of 64.29% of armed robberies in the first quarter of 2012 in comparison of, first quarter 2013 in comparison of 2012, as well as a decrease of almost 40% for strong armed robberies. So those are significant decreases based on those gentlemen's efforts, hard work, and I'm sure they're going to continue working just as hard, and they're very beneficial for a drop in robberies that we had in the first quarter of last year. And then the last slide, I wanted to share also Miguel Rauda. He's a gentleman who was a victim of a bicycle theft 2 weeks ago. And during that bicycle theft, it was the deputy investigated. It was a patrol call where the deputy later found out that was Mr. Miguel Rauda's only means of transportation was his bicycle. Hardworking gentleman, wakes up early and gets home real late to support his family. So the deputy found it in his heart to contact some of our resources within the Sheriff's Department, and through some of the local businesses out here, we were able to get that bicycle donated to him so he can continue working and providing for his family the following day. So all that was done within less than 24 hours. So I applaud Deputy DeLoof, who had the foresight to help this victim of bicycle theft, as well as I applaud the anonymous business owner who wants to remain anonymous, but for helping us out with some of our leftover Christmas inventory. So we have good citizens out here, which is no surprise to us, but I just want to highlight that. And those are the statistics that I have.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions? Please pass on our congratulations to the robbery suppression team on receive their exemplary service award.
Well, will do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. California Highway Patrol.
Good morning, everybody. We have 2 fatal collisions up to this point for this year, which is consistent with our 3-year average. For DUI-involved TCs, we have 9 so far for 2014, which is down from our 3-year average of 12. We had 57 arrests so far for DUI, which is up from our 3-year average of 53. So those are good numbers. We are gearing up for our Every 15 Minutes program. So we have commitments from Paraclete, AV High, Palmdale, and Lancaster. So we'll be putting on those programs between April and May of this year. So we're pretty excited about that. As you guys know from the last year when we brought in the video, it's a pretty good program. So we're excited about it. And to have 4 with that commitment, that's pretty good as well. So, any questions?
No, it's great to hear about the every 15-minute programs and the fact that you have 4 high schools. We've seen the impact of that, and anything that you can do that get kids thinking early about not driving on the influence of alcohol is wonderful, so thank you.
It's a good program. Yes, thank you.
We are going to, we don't have a district attorney's update or a Business Watch subcommittee public safety update at this time, so I'm moving from there to public business from the floor. Do we have any speakers cards?
No speaker cards.
Okay. Commissioners' comments?
You have a comment over here, Jim.
Oh, I'm
Just
sorry.
real quick before your comments. Last night at the council meeting, there was a gentleman that came and spoke, expressed his willingness to open a medical marijuana business, and then began a conversation about the pending ballot measure in November. And some of the short research I did, there's numerous legalization of marijuana ballot measures on for November, and the council had requested the criminal justice take this on as a in an effort to I don't want to say preempt, but to be prepared for the impact of a legalization of marijuana policy statewide, and kind of get your, I guess, bearings as relates to the impacts of that. There are multiple measures. It's going to be a difficult process to understand which one is the most likely to win, which one is the most likely to qualify, some of those discussions, but the council's request was, if we're ahead of the curve, we'll be far better off than if we're behind the curve if this happens. So however your commission wants to handle that, maybe it's through a committee. I know you've had successes in identifying a couple individuals who want to participate in that conversation and then report back, or maybe it might start with a report from staff as it relates to, the background of that information. But however you want to proceed, we'll be happy to accommodate.
Just speaking on my own behalf, personally I would find it interesting for the staff to give us a presentation of what you consider to be the scope of the issue and what it is you'd like us specifically to look at, and go from there, since we still have time before anything would be passed regardless.
Correct. Okay, we'll plan down that path, okay. And we'll coordinate with Pat and his team, as well as some of the planning and zoning issues that may result from it as well, and see if we can make a presentation on what the impacts might be.
Just don't do it in April. We cancel that meeting.
Then it'll give us some time.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Commissioner comments? Nothing. Hearing none. We are adjourned until our next regular meeting on Wednesday, March 12th at 10 o'clock a.m.